In this video, I'm going to try to quickly explain the normal inverse scramble switch or NISS technique that's used in fewest move challenge event. This is a very high level overview just to explain how I understand it. I'm going to skip over a lot of details. I'll be talking fast, so pay attention. So imagine that you have a cube that's in a solved state and you apply a scramble to it, notated in this bracket with the letter S here. And what you end up with is a scrambled cube. And you would do a bunch of moves to solve the cross, assuming you're doing CFOP method to solve your cube. After you do your moves to solve the cross, it's in a state where the cross is solved. You continue with doing required moves to solve your F2L. Your cube would have its F2L solved. And then you would do OLL solved. And you do PLL to finally solve your cube again. So it's going back to the solved state. So that's the foundation. And now let's introduce the inverse zone. So if you take your cube and you apply the scramble, but inverse, you're gonna get a scrambled cube as well. And you would do the same CFOP method and you get your cube solved as well. So maybe in this normal method, or sorry, using the normal scramble, you would get, let's say, a 56 move solution. And if you apply the inverse solution, inverse scramble, you might find a solution that's only 50 moves. So that's a 6 move improvement. But that's not fully utilizing the potential of NISS, because NISS means you can switch back and forth in the middle of your solution discovery to find even fewer moves. So the next slides are going to be illustration of an example. So starting here with the solved state, you apply the normal scramble to your cube. Your cube is scrambled now, and you figure out that the best number of moves you can do with the cross is 6. And you decide, okay, let's check out what if we do it with the inverse scramble. So you take either the same cube, solve it, and then you apply the inverse scramble, or you get a spare cube, you do an inverse scramble, and you found out, oh, I can do a cross in 4 moves instead of 6. So that's better. And you decide to try to figure out a solution from there. Maybe from here in the inverse zone, you want to proceed with your first F2L pair, but you don't find something that's easy to do. Maybe you have to do a crazy 11 move first pair, and that's the best you can find. Okay, let's switch it to the normal zone to see if we can find something better. So how to do that? You need to start with the solved cube again, and you apply the inverse of the cross that you've done in the inverse zone. And that gets your cube to a state what I like to call the setup state. And then you apply the normal scramble. And if you've done all the moves correctly, your cube should have its cross solved. And from there, you proceed with your next step of the solution, which is figuring out F2L pair number 1. Let's say you found, oh, there's an easy 3 moves insert somehow. You got a free pair or whatever. I'm just making that up. And then you see that, oh, it leads up to a next insert, which is a nice insert as well. And you do that. F2L number 2, and you got 2 pairs solved now. And here, oh, you're stuck again. You don't see any good insertions. Switch it back. So you take this whole bunch of moves that you've done in the normal zone here. Start with the solved cube. Apply the moves that you done earlier, but inversed. And now your cube is in a setup state again. And then you apply the inverse scramble plus the cross, the moves of the cross that you found in the very, very first step just now. And you will arrive in a state where your cube is going to have 2 pairs solved, 2 F2L pairs solved. And you Continue looking at your cube to figure out how else to proceed the solution. Let's say we find F2L pair number 3, number 4, and then you solve your OLL, and you get OLL solved. And just for funsies, let's just switch it back to the normal zone. I like to note that whatever PLL you get in the inverse zone or the other way, when you switch it, you're still going to get the same PLL. So I'm not going to elaborate why this might have a benefit. So you take a whole bunch of all the moves just now and do it inverse, starting with the solve state again. Do an OL inverse, the moves you did for F2 pair number 4 inverse, number 3 inverse, cross inverse, and now your cube is back in the setup state. You apply the normal scramble, do the moves that you did to do F2L pair number 1, number 2, you're going to end up with the OLL solved state. And you just need to do PLL to finally solve your cube again. And that's not the end, because this only is the framework from which you're going to extract your solution. So let's see what happens here. So this is just from the previous slide, cleaned up a little bit. So all this does is you have a solved cube, you do all this whole bunch of moves in a row, and all it does is bring your cube back to solve, which is not what you actually need. Because in the FMC, what you want is actually from this position here, where it's scrambled, you want to write down all of these moves to get it back to solved. So what I did was kind of shifted the names of the states here. So here, instead of it being a solved state, I call it a setup state. And the setup state gets shifted and it's called the solve state. And right after scramble, you have a scrambled state and you do this. Don't ask me why this helps me understand this better, but if you can understand it, good for you. That makes two of us. So in summary, your solution is what you did in a normal zone, the moves that you did in the normal zone. For example, here in my illustration, F2L number 1, F2L number 2, and the PLL, plus the moves that you did in the inverse zone, but inverse of that. And there you have it. That is NISS. The end. Thanks.